The Quran, Islam's holy book and one of the most influential texts in human history, has a remarkable story that begins in the caves of Mecca and spans 14 centuries of preservation, recitation, and global dissemination. Unlike other religious texts that developed over centuries through multiple authors, the Quran's origins are traced to a single source during a concentrated period of 23 years. To understand how this book came to guide the lives of nearly 2 billion people today, we must journey back to 7th century Arabia and follow the extraordinary process of its revelation, compilation, and preservation across continents and cultures. The story begins in the year 610 AD in a cave called Hira, located on Jabal al-Nur, the Mountain of Light, outside the bustling city of Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad ibn Abdullah, a 40-year-old merchant known throughout Mecca as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one, was spending time in solitary meditation when he experienced what Muslims believe was the first divine revelation. According to Islamic tradition, the angel Gabriel, known in Arabic as Jibril, appeared to him with the command to read, beginning with the words that would become the opening verses of chapter 96 of the Quran. Read in the name of your Lord, who created man from a clinging substance. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. This moment, known as the Night of Power, or Laylat al-Qadr, marks the beginning of Muhammad's prophetic mission and the start of Quranic revelation that would continue for the next 23 years of his life. The revelations didn't come all at once, but were received gradually, responding to the evolving needs of the growing Muslim community and addressing various situations, questions, and challenges that arose. These divine communications came in different forms and lengths, sometimes as single verses, other times as complete chapters, each perfectly suited to its historical context while maintaining timeless relevance. Some verses were revealed during the 13 years Muhammad spent in Mecca, where he and his followers faced severe persecution and opposition from the established tribal order that profited from the pilgrimage trade and polytheistic practices. During this Meccan period, the revelations primarily focused on fundamental beliefs about monotheism, the afterlife, social justice, and moral conduct, calling people to abandon idol worship and embrace the worship of one God. The character of the revelations shifted when Muhammad and his followers migrated to Medina in 622 AD, an event known as the Hijra that marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. The Medinan revelations, received during the 10 years Muhammad spent leading a growing community of believers, addressed practical matters of governance, law, family relations, economic transactions, and community organization. These verses established the foundations of Islamic society, including laws regarding marriage, inheritance, commercial dealings, criminal justice, and relations with other religious communities. The timing and context of each revelation were carefully noted by Muhammad's companions, who recognized the profound significance of preserving not just the words, but also the circumstances surrounding their revelation, creating a detailed historical record that would later inform Islamic jurisprudence and interpretation. From the very beginning, the Quran was primarily an oral tradition, reflecting the sophisticated oral culture of Arabian society. Muhammad, who according to Islamic sources was Ummi, meaning unlettered or illiterate, would recite the revelations to his companions with perfect clarity and precision. His followers would then memorize these revelations with extraordinary accuracy, aided by the natural rhythm and linguistic beauty of the Arabic text. Arabian society had a rich tradition of oral poetry and storytelling, making memorization a highly developed skill that was considered both an art and a sacred duty. Many of Muhammad's followers became hufaz, meaning those who had memorized the entire Quran, a remarkable achievement that involved committing over 6,000 verses to memory with perfect accuracy. This oral preservation was considered the primary and most authentic method of maintaining the text, a tradition that continues to this day, with millions of Muslims around the world having memorized the entire Quran. The process of memorization, known as hifz, typically begins in childhood and involves not just learning the words, but understanding proper pronunciation, rhythm, and the subtle variations in recitation that preserve the text's original beauty and meaning. The chain of oral transmission, known as isnad, was meticulously maintained, with each student learning directly from a qualified teacher who could trace their own learning back through an unbroken chain to the Prophet Muhammad himself. While memorization was the primary method of preservation, writing also played an important role from the early days of revelation. Muhammad had numerous scribes who would write down the revelations on various materials available in 7th century Arabia, including carefully prepared parchment, leather, palm leaves, flat stones, pieces of wood, and even the shoulder blades of camels. Among the most notable scribes was Zayd ibn Thabit, a young man from Medina who became Muhammad's primary secretary for recording revelations due to his literacy, intelligence, and unwavering dedication to accuracy. Other prominent companions who served as scribes included Ali ibn Abi Talib, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, Ubay ibn Ka'b, who was known for his exceptional recitation, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, whose deep understanding of the Quran made him one of the most respected interpreters of the text. These written materials, however, were not compiled into a single book during Muhammad's lifetime, but remained as individual pieces stored in various locations throughout Medina. The Prophet would regularly instruct his scribes on where each new revelation should be placed within the growing corpus, ensuring that the divine order of the text was maintained. This process of arrangement was not chronological based on the order of revelation, but followed a specific sequence that Muhammad communicated to his followers through divine guidance. Each chapter, called a surah, was designated its specific position in the final arrangement, and within each chapter, the verses known as ayat were arranged in their prescribed order according to the Prophet's explicit instructions. The organization of the Quran as we know it today was thus established during Muhammad's lifetime through his direct guidance and supervision. The revelations were not arranged chronologically, but according to a divinely ordained sequence that Muhammad communicated to his followers with great precision. The longest chapters generally appear early in the compilation, while shorter chapters tend to appear toward the end, though this pattern has many exceptions that serve specific purposes in the overall structure. Muhammad would regularly recite portions of the Quran during the 5 daily prayers and would review the entire text with the angel Gabriel each year during the month of Ramadan, with a complete double review occurring in his final year of life, ensuring that the arrangement and preservation were absolutely perfect. After Muhammad's death in 632 AD, the Muslim community faced the unprecedented challenge of preserving the Quran for future generations without the Prophet's direct guidance. The immediate catalyst for compilation arose during the Ridda Wars, the campaigns against Arabian tribes who had renounced Islam after Muhammad's death. Under the leadership of the first caliph, Abu Bakr, Muslim forces engaged in several battles, most notably at Yamama, where many Hufaz were killed in combat. Umar ibn al-Khattab, who would later become the second caliph, approached Abu Bakr with urgent concerns about the potential loss of the oral tradition if more memorizers were killed in battle. Recognizing the gravity of this threat to Islamic heritage, Abu Bakr commissioned Zayd ibn Thabit to undertake the monumental task of compiling the entire Quran into a single written manuscript. Zayd initially hesitated, feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility of undertaking something that the Prophet himself had not explicitly ordered. However, after careful consideration and consultation with other senior companions, he accepted this crucial mission. Zayd approached this task with extreme caution and methodical precision, establishing rigorous criteria for accepting material. He would only include verses that met 3 strict conditions. They had to exist in written form from the Prophet's lifetime. They had to be confirmed by at least 2 reliable witnesses who had heard the Prophet recite them, and they had to match the recollection of the Hufaz who had memorized the entire Quran. This compilation process took several months and involved gathering material from numerous sources. Written fragments were collected from the homes of various companions, while the oral testimony of multiple memorizers was carefully cross-referenced to ensure absolute accuracy. Zayd and his team worked with meticulous care, examining each verse and its placement within the broader structure of each chapter. The process was not merely mechanical copying, but involved careful verification and authentication at every step. This compilation was completed around 634 AD and became known as the Mushaf, meaning the written compilation. The completed manuscript was entrusted to Abu Bakr, and after his death it passed to Umar. and subsequently to Umar's daughter Hafsa, who was one of the Prophet's widows. The next major milestone in Quranic history occurred during the Caliphate of Uthman ibn Affan, the third caliph, around 650 AD. As Islam spread rapidly across vast territories stretching from Spain in the west to Central Asia in the east, different regions began developing slight variations in recitation due to dialectical differences in Arabic pronunciation and the influence of local languages. These variations, while not affecting the meaning of the text, began causing confusion and concern among Muslims who encountered different pronunciations during pilgrimage to Mecca or during military campaigns where soldiers from different regions served together. The issue came to a head when Hudhaifa ibn al-Yaman, a prominent companion who had been serving on military campaigns in Armenia and Azerbaijan, reported to Uthman about disputes he had witnessed between soldiers from different regions over the correct pronunciation of certain Quranic verses. Recognizing that these differences could potentially lead to serious divisions within the Muslim community, Uthman decided to take decisive action to preserve unity and prevent the kind of textual variations that had affected earlier religious scriptures. Uthman ordered the creation of standardized copies of the Quran based on Abu Bakr's compilation, which was borrowed from Hafsa for this purpose. A committee of learned companions was assembled, led once again by Zayd ibn Thabit, and including Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr, Sa'id ibn al-As, and Abdul Rahman ibn Harith ibn Hisham. This committee was specifically chosen to represent different tribal dialects and ensure that the standardized text would be acceptable to Muslims from various Arabian backgrounds. The committee prepared several identical copies, written in the Qurashi dialect that was the Prophet's own dialect and the one in which the Quran had originally been revealed. These standardized copies were sent to major centers of the Islamic world, including Mecca, Medina, Damascus, Basra, Kufa, and possibly other important cities. Each copy was accompanied by a qualified reciter who could teach the proper pronunciation and recitation style. Uthman then ordered all other written materials and variant copies to be collected and destroyed to ensure complete uniformity across the Islamic world. This decision, while controversial to some at the time who were reluctant to see their personal copies destroyed, successfully preserved a single, authentic version of the text that eliminated regional variations and potential sources of conflict. The Uthmanic Codex established the written standard that remains completely unchanged to this day, representing one of the most successful examples of textual preservation in human history. However, the oral tradition remained equally important, and Islamic scholars developed a sophisticated science called qira'at, or the study of Quranic recitation. This discipline preserved multiple authentic ways of reciting the Quran that had been transmitted from the Prophet Muhammad through different chains of narration, each representing legitimate variations in pronunciation, emphasis, and melodic style that existed in different Arabic dialects of the 7th century. 7 primary modes of recitation, known as the 7 qira'at, were eventually recognized as authentic by Islamic scholars. These included the recitations of Nafi from Medina, Ibn Kathir from Mecca, Abu Amr from Basra, Ibn Amir from Damascus, Asim from Kufa, Hamza from Kufa, and Al-Kisai from Kufa. Each of these recitation styles was transmitted through multiple chains of narrators, creating a complex but precise system for preserving the authentic pronunciation and melodic patterns of Quranic recitation. Later scholars expanded this to include 10, and eventually 14, recognized modes of recitation, all of which were considered authentic transmissions from the Prophet. As the Islamic Empire expanded under the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties, the need for understanding the Quran among non-Arabic speaking populations led to the development of extensive commentaries, translations, and scholarly works. Early scholars like Ibn Abbas, who was the Prophet's cousin and was known for his profound knowledge of Quranic interpretation, began explaining difficult passages and providing historical context for the revelations. Ibn Abbas was particularly renowned for his understanding of the circumstances of revelation, known as Asbab al-Nuzul, which provided crucial context for understanding the meaning and application of specific verses. By the 8th and 9th centuries, comprehensive commentaries called tafsir were being written by scholars throughout the Islamic world. The most monumental of these early works was the Tafsir al-Tabari by Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, completed in the early 10th century. This massive work, spanning 30 volumes in modern editions, not only explained the meaning of every verse, but also preserved different interpretations, historical context, linguistic analysis, and legal implications of Quranic teachings. Al-Tabari's methodology involved collecting and analyzing various interpretations from earlier scholars, while providing his own careful analysis based on Arabic grammar, historical context, and Islamic legal principles. Other influential early commentaries included the works of al-Qurtubi, who focused particularly on legal and jurisprudential aspects of the Quran, and al-Zamakhshari, whose al-Kashaf became famous for its sophisticated linguistic and rhetorical analysis. These commentaries established methodologies for Quranic interpretation that emphasized the importance of understanding the Arabic language, historical context, legal implications, and spiritual dimensions of the text. The tradition of tafsir writing continued throughout Islamic history, with each generation of scholars building upon the work of their predecessors while addressing the particular needs and questions of their own time. The science of Arabic grammar and linguistics developed largely in response to the need to understand and preserve the precise meaning of the Quran. Scholars like Sibawayh in the 8th century created systematic grammars of Arabic, using Quranic usage as the highest standard of linguistic purity and eloquence. The Quran's unique literary style, characterized by its rhythmic prose, intricate linguistic patterns, complex wordplay, and multi-layered meanings, became the benchmark for Arabic eloquence and influenced centuries of Arabic literature and poetry. The study of Quranic rhetoric, known as balagha, became a sophisticated discipline that analyzed the text's use of metaphor, rhythm, sound patterns, and semantic layers. Islamic scholars developed detailed studies of Quranic vocabulary, examining the precise meanings of individual words and their usage in different contexts throughout the text. They created concordances that tracked every occurrence of specific terms, analyzed the relationships between related concepts, and explored the subtle variations in meaning that could result from different grammatical constructions. This linguistic precision was considered essential not only for understanding the text's meaning, but also for deriving legal rulings and theological principles from Quranic teachings. Manuscript preservation became a highly refined art in Islamic civilization, with the copying of the Quran considered one of the most noble and spiritually rewarding activities. Calligraphers developed beautiful scripts specifically for copying the Quran, with Kufic script being among the earliest and most revered styles. The angular geometric forms of Kufic calligraphy were considered particularly appropriate for the divine word, and early Quranic manuscripts in this style are among the most treasured artifacts of Islamic art. Later developments included the more flowing Naskh script, which became the standard for most Quranic manuscripts, and various decorative scripts used for special editions. The production of Quranic manuscripts became a religious act governed by strict rules and traditions. Scribes were required to be in a state of ritual purity while copying the text, and the materials used were carefully prepared according to traditional methods. The paper or parchment had to be of the highest quality. The ink was often specially prepared using traditional recipes, and the writing instruments were crafted with particular care. Many scribes would fast or engage in other spiritual practices while copying the Quran, viewing their work as a form of worship and a means of earning divine reward. Elaborate illuminated manuscripts were created for mosques, royal libraries, and wealthy patrons, some taking years to complete and representing the highest achievements of Islamic art. These manuscripts featured intricate geometric patterns, floral designs, and calligraphic decorations that enhanced the sacred text without distracting from its content. The illumination of Quranic manuscripts developed into a sophisticated art form with regional variations. From the bold geometric patterns of North African manuscripts to the delicate floral motifs of Persian and Ottoman examples, the translation of the Quran into other languages began relatively early in Islamic history, but was always approached with great caution and specific theological considerations. Unlike other religious texts where translations often replaced the original language in worship and study, the Arabic Quran remained central to Islamic practice. Muslims believe that the Quran's divine nature is intimately connected to its Arabic language, and that translation, while useful for understanding, cannot fully capture the miraculous linguistic qualities of the original text. The first known translation was into Persian in the 10th century, produced to help Persian-speaking Muslims better understand the text they were already memorizing and reciting in Arabic. This was followed by translations into Turkish, Urdu, Malay, and eventually dozens of other languages as Islam spread to different regions of the world. Each translation was typically accompanied by extensive commentary, explaining that the translation was an interpretation of the meaning rather than the Quran itself, and the Arabic text was always included alongside the translation. The development of translation methodology became a sophisticated discipline within Islamic scholarship. Translators had to balance literal accuracy with readability, theological precision with linguistic clarity, and cultural sensitivity with universal accessibility. Different approaches emerged, from highly literal translations that preserved the Arabic word order and structure as much as possible, to more interpretive translations that prioritized clarity and readability in the target language. The challenge was particularly acute given the Quran's complex linguistic features, including its use of rhetoric, wordplay, multiple layers of meaning, and concepts that might not have direct equivalents in other languages. The invention of printing technology initially met with significant resistance in the Islamic world, partly due to concerns about maintaining the sanctity and accuracy of the Quranic text, and partly due to economic and political factors. The handwriting of the Quran was considered a sacred art, and many scholars worried that mechanical reproduction might introduce errors or diminish the spiritual value of the copying process. Additionally, the guild system that supported professional scribes and calligraphers had economic interests in maintaining traditional methods of manuscript production. The first printed Quran appeared in Venice in 1537, produced by Alessandro Paganini primarily for trade purposes rather than religious use. This edition contained numerous errors and was not widely accepted in the Islamic world. It wasn't until the 18th and 19th centuries that printing began to be more widely accepted in Muslim countries, with major printing projects undertaken in Istanbul under Ottoman patronage, in Cairo under the authority of Al-Azhar University, and later in India, Iran, and other regions. The standardization that printing allowed helped ensure that identical texts were available worldwide, eliminating the small variations that could occur in hand-copied manuscripts. Major printing projects involved careful comparison of multiple manuscripts and extensive proofreading by teams of qualified scholars. The famous Cairo edition, printed at the Amiri Press and first published in 1924, became widely accepted as a standard text and was reprinted numerous times with only minor typographical corrections. Modern technology has revolutionized Quranic preservation and dissemination while maintaining the traditional emphasis on memorization and oral transmission. Digital databases now contain high-resolution images of thousands of historical manuscripts, allowing scholars to study the development of the text and calligraphy with unprecedented precision. Computer analysis has confirmed the remarkable consistency of the Quranic text across centuries and regions, with variations limited to minor differences in spelling conventions that don't affect pronunciation or meaning. Audio recordings have preserved the recitation styles of master reciters from around the world, creating a permanent archive of the oral tradition that complements the written preservation. Famous reciters like Abdul Basit Abdul Samad, Muhammad Siddiq al-Minshawi, and Mahmud Khalil al-Husari have influenced generations of students through their recorded recitations, which serve as models for proper pronunciation, rhythm, and melodic style. These recordings have also made beautiful Quranic recitation accessible to Muslims worldwide, regardless of their access to qualified teachers. Mobile applications and websites now make the Quran accessible to millions of users globally, offering features like searchable text, audio recitation, translations in multiple languages, and detailed commentaries. Some applications use advanced algorithms to help students memorize the Quran by tracking their progress, providing pronunciation guides, and offering review schedules. Despite these technological advances, the traditional methods of memorization and recitation remain central to Islamic education, with millions of students worldwide still learning the entire Quran by heart in madrasas, Islamic schools, and through private instruction. The Quran's influence extends far beyond religious practice into virtually every aspect of Islamic civilization. Islamic law, or Sharia, derives its primary principles from Quranic teachings, with legal scholars developing sophisticated methodologies for extracting legal rulings from the text's guidance on social, economic, and personal matters. The Quran's emphasis on justice, compassion, and social responsibility has shaped Islamic approaches to governance, economic systems, and social organization throughout history. Islamic philosophy grappled extensively with Quranic concepts of knowledge, existence, free will, divine attributes, and human nature. Philosophers like Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Averroes developed complex theological and philosophical systems that sought to reconcile Quranic teachings with Greek philosophical traditions. The Quran's emphasis on reason, observation, and the pursuit of knowledge provided intellectual justification for the scientific achievements of the Islamic Golden Age. Many scientific developments during the Islamic Golden Age were directly motivated by Quranic encouragement of learning and careful observation of natural phenomena. The Quran's references to astronomy, embryology, geology, and other natural sciences inspired Muslim scholars to conduct detailed investigations that advanced human understanding in these fields. The text's emphasis on the unity and order of creation provided a theological framework that supported systematic scientific inquiry. The Quran's literary influence on Arabic and other Islamic languages cannot be overstated. Its sophisticated use of rhetoric, its innovative poetic structures, and its powerful imagery established new standards for literary excellence that influenced poets and writers for centuries. The development of Arabic literary criticism was largely shaped by attempts to understand and explain the Quran's unique literary qualities, leading to sophisticated theories of rhetoric, metaphor, and linguistic beauty. Contemporary scholarship has applied modern linguistic, historical, and literary analysis to the Quran while generally respecting traditional interpretive frameworks. Archaeological discoveries have confirmed many historical details mentioned in the text, while comparative religious studies have explored its relationships with earlier biblical traditions and Arabian religious practices. Linguistic analysis has revealed the text's sophisticated use of semantic fields, sound patterns, and structural elements that create layers of meaning and literary beauty. Modern academic approaches have also examined the Quran's social and economic teachings, finding sophisticated discussions of topics like market regulation, wealth distribution, social welfare, and international relations that remain relevant to contemporary discussions of ethics and policy. The text's emphasis on consultation, justice, and social responsibility has influenced modern Islamic movements seeking to apply Quranic principles to contemporary challenges. The process of Quranic preservation represents one of history's most successful examples of textual transmission across time, geography, and culture. From its origins as oral revelations in the 7th century Arabia to its current status as a globally accessible text available in digital formats, the Quran has maintained remarkable consistency in both its written form and oral tradition. The combination of oral memorization, careful written preservation, scholarly commentary, and community dedication created a system of checks and balances that ensured accuracy across 14 centuries and 6 continents. Today, any copy of the Quran in Arabic, whether printed in Indonesia, Nigeria, Canada, or any other country, will be virtually identical to manuscripts produced over 1,000 years ago. This consistency extends to the oral tradition, where reciters trained in different countries and traditions will demonstrate remarkable uniformity in their pronunciation and recitation, despite having learned in completely different linguistic and cultural environments. The global reach of Quranic education continues to expand, with Islamic schools, universities, and learning centers established in virtually every country with significant Muslim populations. The internet has created new opportunities for Quranic study. with online courses, virtual classrooms, and digital resources making high-quality instruction available to students, regardless of their geographical location. Social media platforms have become venues for sharing recitations, discussing interpretations, and building communities of learners around the world. The Quran's history reveals not just the preservation of a religious text, but the story of a global community's dedication to maintaining what they believe to be divine guidance. From the Prophet Muhammad's companions, who risked their lives to memorize and preserve revelations during the early persecution in Mecca, to medieval scholars who traveled vast distances to study with master teachers, to modern Muslims who continue the tradition of memorization and recitation in every corner of the world. The Quran's history is ultimately about human commitment to preserving and transmitting sacred knowledge across generations. Understanding this remarkable history helps us appreciate the Quran's unique position in world literature, religious thought, and human culture. Its preservation through both oral and written traditions, its influence on language, law, philosophy, and science, and its continued centrality to the lives of nearly 2 billion people make it one of humanity's most significant and influential texts. The Quran's journey from the cave of Hira to every corner of the globe demonstrates the extraordinary power of a text to transcend time, culture, and geography, while maintaining its essential message, form, and transformative impact on human civilization. Thanks for exploring this remarkable journey through the history of the Quran. If you found this information valuable, please share it with others interested in understanding how one of the world's most influential religious texts came to be preserved and transmitted across 14 centuries of human history. The story of the Quran is ultimately a testament to human dedication, divine guidance, and the enduring power of the written and spoken word to shape civilizations and transform lives across time and space.